Hello? Hey, good to go. Alrighty, I hope the food is good. We're gonna get started with this session today. It's going to be around using Apex triggers to extract IoT value from your device data. So I'm gonna quickly get started with who I am. So I'm Kapil Garu. I'm a solution architect here at Salesforce IoT. I've been at Salesforce for 2 years. I previously worked at Sales Cloud on Einstein Analytics, and now I'm at Salesforce IoT. So firstly, I want to say thank you for attending. As always, this is the last day of Dreamforce. I know all of you guys are tired, and especially at this time when you're about to eat. So thank you for joining us. You guys are awesome customers. Thanks for being here. Second thing I want to show you is our forward-looking statement. You've probably seen this a million times. Basically, everything in this presentation is already available on the market right now, but any purchasing decision you make that with what's available out on the market that Salesforce currently offers. So today's agenda, in 20 minutes, we're going to leverage all of your device data that's connected to Salesforce, and then we're going to use an Apex trigger to gain more value for it. So the first three things I'm going to do, or the first thing I'm going to do is quickly go over what Salesforce IoT is, especially in the big IoT landscape. It's not totally obvious what we do at Salesforce. Then I'm going to do a deep dive into using an Apex trigger. So I'm actually going to write some code. That's when we all start praying that the demo works as expected. And then we're going to go over some art of the possible, right? Like what can you do with an Apex trigger from there? Where can you take it to the next step? So like I was saying, Salesforce IoT Explorer, it's an initial Kickstarter platform that we created to get started with IoT in the Salesforce realm. IoT as a whole, it's a big ecosystem, but what we focus on, we call ourselves the IoT CRM. It's basically taking this awesome device data and taking meaningful actions with them. So a lot of our customers, we see that they have device data going into the cloud, but they don't really connect it with anything. And what is Salesforce at the end of the day? We're probably the best CRM out there, right? So we allow taking this device data, connecting with your Salesforce CRM, and taking action. So this architecture is quickly showing you how we do that. So we ingest platform events. And if you guys haven't heard that, that's a new service we piloted last release, which is the enterprise messaging platform, which is a pub subsystem that is on the platform. So platform events come in, they are combined in IoT context, and IoT context is how we create a 360 profile view of your device or your thing or your application. So marrying that device data with existing data on your platform, and then you create IoT orchestration. So IoT orchestrations are your business logic. So it's a finite state machine. You can create rules declaratively through point-and-click interface, and then take actions from there. And then lastly, the outputs of that rules engine or your business logic can be to Salesforce, or it can be back to platform events, where then you can output to any third-party API or integration. So in today's use case, I've created a fictional customer called Borough Home. So what they do is they basically provide a number of services for a connected home system. So they provide a gateway. The gateway is connected to IoT. They're providing a service to monitor all the device talking to the gateway, making sure that your home light bulb and your door lock and your thermostat are working properly. And all of that is being connected to IoT Explorer. So again, we have that rich contextual data to make sure the devices are working at all times. Some of the benefits of having a home gateway is basically to reduce bandwidth consumption for those edge devices, right? The smaller devices with small Arduino boards who don't have that much power that the gateway devices do. The home gateway can also offer software updates, maintain a unified identity, and then save device power, like I said before. So the problem that Borough Home Gateway has is that they basically have this gateway that has all these devices connected to it, and the gateway is sending all this device telemetry at one single event time into IoT Explorer. So what they want to do in IoT is create an Apex trigger that breaks up that event into each individual device and then take action from there. In addition, they want to make sure that that event that comes in from the gateway device, it falls under the subscription period, so that they only respect the devices that people are paying subscription or services for, right? So with that being said, let's jump into the Apex triggers. So this is where Apex triggers, for those who are not familiar, You can create Apex triggers on any sort of Salesforce object or custom object, but in this case, we're going to be looking at platform events in particular, right? So previously, I showed this architecture, and what we're zooming in on is the left portion of this, right? So using a platform event coming from the edge device, so in this case, the home gateway, using an Apex trigger to process that in real time. So dissect that initial event to each individual device, filter it, and then output to their own platform events, which will then be respected by IoT Explorer. So Apex triggers, in this case, we're going to be creating an Apex trigger on a platform event. So after the platform event is inserted into the Salesforce platform, we will write code or Apex logic to filter and multiply that event from there. So what the Apex trigger is going to do is take the gateway event, it's going to process it in real time, making sure that that gateway event falls in the subscription period. It's going to divide that event into each one of its own sub-events. So right here, you're looking at the gateway platform event. You're seeing the fridge, the door lock, and then the camera. And then each one of those individual device platform events will go to its own orchestration, where you can write custom logic for the device from there on. So I think that makes all sense. And then so the steps I'm going to be showing you today, so the org that I'm going to be using already has platform events set up. So it has a platform event for the home gateway, all the edge devices, which are going to be the home lock, the camera, and the fridge. What we're going to be doing in today's session is actually writing that Apex trigger. So we're going to attach the Apex trigger to the platform event. We're going to filter it based on its subscription period, which is going to be a custom object that lives in Salesforce. And then we're going to split that home gateway event into its own individual device, and then publish them to the IoT orchestration, and then utilize the events from there on. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is create the Apex trigger, right? So the Apex trigger code looks like this, and it creates the trigger on the home gateway event. And when that comes in, we will respect the home gateway event and write logic from there. So I'm going to switch over to a different screen here. And what you're looking at is the developer console, right? And a lot of you are probably familiar with this. This is available through just the gear icon on the top of your Salesforce org of your choice. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new Apex class, or an Apex trigger. I'm going to call it home gateway trigger Apex session 2. Attach it to my gateway event here, and then submit. So that should automatically create a gateway trigger event, or triggered already. And now I'm going to fill up the code inside. So one quick thing that I want to show is, so when platform events get triggered, sometimes they get batched in our platform. That's basically saying that if 5 platform events come in real time, those all get fudged together. So what we have to do in this Apex trigger is dissect each one of those home gateway events. So I'm going to copy paste some code here. That's basically going to iterate through each one of the triggers. So now I have the individual gateway event that I want to dissect, right? So I'm going to switch back to the presentation here. So now we're looking at each gateway event, and now we're going to want to filter it. So what I'm going to do is in real time, I'm going to SOQL query for the subscription custom object. That custom object will let me know if this gateway event falls in the subscription period. One thing I want to know here is the gateway event that is being sent from the device itself has a subscription ID field. That's what we're looking at here. And that's what we're using to SOQL query in real time. And if that subscription custom object exists, then we'll do more logic from there. So again, let me switch back to my developer console. I'm going to go ahead and paste this code. And I don't want to write this SOQL query in real time, so that's why I'm copy pasting. And I'm going to delete this extra. So now we have the subscription object. If it exists, then we will then go on to the other logic. So this was our part 2 of the step, which we're filtering the gateway event on the subscription object, right? So the next portion of the Apex trigger, we're going to split that gateway event into each one of its own, into each one of the devices. So there's a field on the gateway event called devices. So what devices holds is a serialized JSON string of all the devices reporting to that home gateway, right? So in this case, you're looking at the event for the camera, the lock, and the fridge, and then the individual attributes for each one of those different events. So for camera, you have the image URL. For the lock, you have the battery level. And then for the fridge, you have the temperature level. So what we're doing in this code is we're splitting up that gateway event, that serialized JSON string. So first, we're parsing it using the JSON parser that's available in Apex. And then we're iterating through all of the objects contained in this field, and then pushing those objects or those individual objects into their own platform events. So that's what I'm going to get started with here. And again, I'm going to switch back to my developer console. So now we have each individual gateway event, and then we're going to pull the devices field from that gateway event and then parse that from there. So again, I'm copy pasting this logic, but what that's doing is this initial field or this initial line is taking that devices field from the gateway event, from the platform event, it's parsing it, and then it's going to iterate through each one of the arrays. In this case, there's just going to be one array, obviously, and then it's going to iterate through each one of the objects inside of that array. So this is where the logic for each object exists. So the object here would be each individual platform event for the edge devices, so the fridge, the lock, and the camera. And now I'm going to write the logic for each one of those objects, right? So what I'm going to do first is cast that object as a thing event data. So I've already created an Apex class called thing event data. And what that is doing is it's letting me leverage those fields from the individual devices in Apex. So first thing I do is parse it. And then I go from there. So now I have the event data stored in an object here. And I'm casting it now in my event data. So if my event data is of thing type, and it should autocomplete to lock, then I create a new platform event in my Apex trigger called home lock. Specify the asset ID, and then I publish it to the event bus. So one key thing I want to notify here, again, copy pasting for time's sake. One key thing I want to notice here is that, as you can see, the way you create a platform event is very similar to creating a Salesforce object, but the way you create it and push it onto the event bus is by doing event bus.publish. Typically with a Salesforce object or a custom object, you would do insert. So that's a special thing you have to change for platform events. So now we've created the logic for the lock, and now I'm going to copy paste for the other two devices, which are going to be the fridge and the camera. And the code for those are going to look very similar. It's just going to be specific logic for the fridge and then the camera as well. So what we've done now is taken that devices field from the home gateway event. We've parsed it using a JSON parser. And now we're respecting each one of the individual devices, and we're publishing them to their own platform events. So at the end of this blob, I'm going to do parser.skipChildren, and that lets me move on to each one of those next objects. There we go. So I'm going to clean out some of these white spaces so the code is more condensed. And check if I have any problems. Go ahead and save. So now we have a problem here with the trigger Apex session, but was blah. So I'm about to debug this in real time, or actually, to make it a lot easier, I'm just going to copy paste my JSON parser. There we go. So that worked. I was probably missing a brace somewhere. But I'm going to go ahead and save this Apex trigger. And now I'm going to switch to my browser, which has my Salesforce org. Make sure my Apex trigger is activated. And it looks like it's good to go. So I'm going to switch over to another tab here. For those of you not familiar, this is Workbench. So Workbench is basically a UI that wraps a lot of the Salesforce API. What I'm doing in this specific page is I'm creating a platform event. So the endpoint looks very similar to creating a custom object. You specify the platform event here instead, which is the home gateway event. The data I'm sending is the asset ID, the subscription ID, which is what I use in the Apex trigger to pull that custom object out, and then the devices field, which has the serialized JSON string that we parsed in the Apex trigger, correct? And then on the other Workbench page here, I'm actually going to be subscribing to the platform event that is going to be the output of that Apex trigger. So the output of that Apex trigger, and the one I'm subscribing to here, is the home lock event. So what I have to do first is click subscribe, and if successful, Workbench says it's now listening to this event coming into the event bus into the Salesforce platform. So I'm going to go ahead and click execute on my Apex trigger, and what you should see here is the output of that Apex trigger, right? So now we've created the home lock event, and that entire blob of the device, this is JSON string, we've parsed. We knew which one belongs to the home lock event, and we sent those specific fields to the platform event. So in this case, the asset ID and the battery level, right? So at the end of that, we have a platform event, and I previously showed you the architecture of IoT, but the platform event went into the context, and then out of that, we are creating the orchestration. So that platform event for the home lock will go to the security monitoring or the lithium battery monitoring orchestration. For the sake of time today, you won't be able to see the orchestrations, but that's kind of the output of this entire session, right? So what some of the art of the possible. With Apex triggers today, I just showed you how you can filter and then split up the trigger from there, but you can also do a lot of really cool stuff. You can do geolocation calculations, calculating change over time, posting notifications to output notifications to Slack or Live Message or Twilio, and further queuing Apex jobs. So this is what we're seeing out in the field with customers. They're leveraging Apex triggers to do all this complicated logic in real time using Apex triggers. So with that being said, I want to say thank you again. If there's any questions, feel free to come up to me after this presentation. If you can't grab me, email me at kapil.garu@salesforce.com. This slide deck will be shared after the presentation. We have a trailhead to get you started on Apex triggers, and all the Apex code is available on GitHub for you to download later. So thanks you for attending, and I hope you guys have a great Dreamforce.